Hi, Garnet here. I'm taking a chance with a handheld camera. Let's see how this works out. Anyway, I thought that I would speak just a little bit about, pardon the, the movement of the camera, I'm just holding it with my hand. I thought I'd talk a little bit about this business of stable state brain and unstable state brain. So stable and unstable. I've been making a few recent references to it in the Facebook posts and trying to give some insight. I didn't, in the beginning, want to use this principle because oftentimes the Neuro Light can seem kind of too technical, or maybe it's a little bit scary or something like that. But the fact is that I think it's important. So I'd like to talk a little bit about it. It won't be long. We'll see, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. I'm not really quite sure. Anyway, the brain, our brain, your brain, my brain, is recognized as a complex adaptive system. And what that means basically is it's self-regulating. It's self-organizing. It has no boss. The brain doesn't have a brain. And part of the characteristic of the brain is that it has a critical necessity of having a fundamentally stable state so that things make sense, always turning nonsense into sense, meaningless into meaningful, noise into signal. And the stable state allows us to live our life, for me to do this right now, to not go crazy, to not have swarms of diluted perception. The stable state is critical for the well-being of a brain, of a complex adaptive system. Now, part of the fascination, part of the extraordinary capacity of the brain, part of the need, the appetite of the brain, in its constant search for adaptive learning, is the designed ability to temporarily, for limited periods of time, to go into an unstable state. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing, but it has its limits of being good. Now, in an unstable state, then the brain is able to have novel or new perspectives on information. The way it normally sees and hears, all of the senses, including cognitive processes, even the way that it kind of analyzes or appreciates experience, can have an unusual or uncommon quality to it, these unstable states. Now, frankly, we're oftentimes exposed to unstable states. As a matter of fact, the most obvious, the most regular, is dream sleep. And in dream sleep, the default mode network in the brain destabilizes, and this creates a lot of fluidity, the sense of self, the way that one thing links to another, sometimes fantastic, sometimes emotionally charged. This is a very easy to understand unstable state. Now, there are loads of ways of destabilizing the brain. As you can see, some of them are innate. Externally, just about any shock or high stress or high levels of exertion can destabilize the brain for some period of time. Some people have called it the zone or flow or weird. It depends on your association, your way of dealing with it. Now, some of us have problems with the brain, and it'll stay destabilized for long periods of time, and this destabilization will kind of infect the stable state. And here what we have, of course, is we have things that evolve into aspects of neurosis and psychosis. Famously, like a paranoid schizophrenic is sometimes described as a person who is dreaming while awake. They can't separate the dream states from the waking states. So, stable and unstable. Of course, quite obviously and maybe famously, hallucinogenic drugs, this is what they do, each with their own kind of personality, but they all work at a destabilization of normal functions. Now, when a brain is destabilized, it has an opportunity, without any guarantee at all, of experiencing novel or unusual information. Now, the information, if it's experienced, is typically not remembered. That's one thing. The other is it can be good stuff, neutral stuff, bad stuff. It can be the source of inspiration. It can also be the source of insanity. So the destabilization of the brain into this unstable state has a kind of a famous or infamous quality. I suppose the simplest, quick experience of destabilization is when you're asked a question. The question, the interrogative, will cause a momentary or temporary destabilization in the brain, and then you go searching, and maybe you say, I never thought of it that way. So the commonness of destabilized states is surprising once you recognize them. Now, when you have a destabilized state, you may have an encounter with information that could be of value or not. And then the other thing, which is critical, if there is an encounter with information that has value, it's the question of whether it's then integrated into the stable state as a form of new learning. So, I'm going to pause. Okay, so this is number 2. I couldn't figure out what was going on because it seemed to be getting kind of whited out. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, I'm going to finish up a little bit more about the stable, unstable thing. One of the points that I wanted to make, among many, is that in the Neuro Light, in the design of compositions, the stable and unstable principle is utilized. Every single Neuro Light brain skills composition has a certain amount of stable signaling that reinforces strong and common learned skills, and it also has a certain amount of destabilizing signal to create a kind of loosened appreciation, a kind of an access for the brain into novel or new perspectives on the information. So this is, it's kind of a technical aspect, but also because it relates so directly to people's experiences, I thought I'd go ahead and give you that peek into the fact that there is stable and unstable. We all have some amount of instability at certain times. It's a good thing. It's part of what allows our brain to have insightful, new, novel experiences. Recently in Facebook, there were some discussions back and forth, for example, about darkroom retreats, and I can say also like isolation tanks, float tanks. When there's sensory deprivation, then there's also this excited possibility of some temporary instability. Also in some recent Facebook postings, I talked about the prisoner cinema, which is sort of an odd way of saying that people who had been stuck in dark dungeons began to experience all these phosphenic experiences, the colors, the geometric patterns, and so on. This is an example of a destabilization. So the stable state is basic. The unstable state is not basic, but it's fundamental. And moving in and out of it with some degree of fluidity is a healthy, good thing. But the ratio has to be mostly stable. Knowing that just because it's unstable doesn't mean that it's going to be of value. As a matter of fact, most all the information, even if it seems important in the moment, one is it may or may not be important, you can be confused. The other is that it's typically not integrated. There's no memory of it. The concept with the Neuro Light is to make sure that when the instability is introduced, the destabilizing, that loosened perspective then is immediately coaxed or captured into what's called the prime attractor of the stable message. So the learning moves along normal pathways, and at different points moves out of normal pathways into unusual or uncommon pathways, the so-called non-ordinary pathways. And then, with an exposure to the possibility of new information, brings it back down and into the potential of stable integration. And that's how we can learn. It's one of the reasons why the Neuro Light can have, in such a short period of time, even like 11 minutes, for example, can really create positive effectors, positive effects in such a short period of time, because it's designed to take advantage of this dance between stable and unstable and then bringing it back to integration again. So anyway, I'm just speaking sort of off the cuff, and maybe I'll do some writing about it. In any case, just a little look into some of the extraordinary qualities of our brain and the way it is that we learn. Thanks much. Bye-bye.